Here are 50 amazing facts to blow your mind. Helena Bonham Carter reprised her role as Lady Toddington from the 2005 Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit film in a Wallace and Gromit sofa commercial from 2019. 73% of India's district judges say the threat of frivolous complaints from litigants is one of their biggest stressors. In 2021, a New Zealand woman said she was looking forward to breathing easier and having a straighter nose after doctors removed a calcified tiddlywink that had been lodged in her nose for 37 years. It was discovered via CT scan after a COVID-19 nasal swab test triggered serious sinus problems. The movie The Dark Crystal was bought back from the skeptical studio by Jim Henson, who funded its release with his own money. The Oh Brother Where Art Thou character Pappy O'Daniel was named after a real governor of Texas. He hosted a radio show with a band and was the only man to beat future President Lyndon Johnson in an election. The first theory that an increase in atmospheric CO2 could warm the planet was formulated in 1892. The Liverpool-Manchester Railway, the world's first inner-city line, opened on 15th of September in 1830. It was fully steam-powered, double-tracked, signaled, and timetabled. P2 was a Masonic lodge that opened in Italy in the 80s as a clandestine anti-communist criminal organization that planned to take over the Italian government and rewrite the Constitution. Its prominent members were two members of the Secret Service. Pixar had to complete the entire Toy Story 2 in 9 months to meet Disney's deadline. The production was so straining that in one instance, an animator had forgotten to drop his child off at daycare one morning and, in a mental haze, forgot the baby in the backseat of the car in the parking lot. China shut down their last steam locomotive freight lines in 2022, leaving North Korea and Bosnia the only countries with steam trains in non-heritage service. Flying the Union flag upside down can be taken as a distress signal or even an insult. It has a correct way up, St. Andrew's white above St. Patrick's red, and should never be flown dirty or torn, needs no permission in the UK, and can be flown at night if lit. Quantum field theory predicts that energy density of empty space to be about 10 to the 8th GeV to the power of 4. In 2015, it was measured to actually be about 2.5 times 10 to the minus 47th GeV to the power of 4. That's smaller than predicted by 1 octodecillion percent. This has been called the worst theoretical prediction in the history of physics. Fashion designer Oleg Cassini attempted to issue a cease and desist to NASA or JPL for naming the Cassini spacecraft. Oleg didn't realize it was named after the 18th century astronomer Jean-Dominique Cassini. There are more speakers of a language called Canada than the population of Canada. A 2002 Winter Olympics athlete from Canada named Ryan Wedding became an international drug trafficker, ultimately becoming a high-ranking member in the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, and has been added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. William Crush organized a publicity stunt involving two unmanned trains crashing into each other head-on at 45 miles per hour. The impact unexpectedly caused both of the train's boilers to explode and killed 2 spectators. Crush was immediately fired from the railroad but was rehired the next day. The lump of labor fallacy is the misconception that there's a finite amount of work to be done in an economy which can be distributed to create more or fewer jobs. Some people can't wink or can only wink one eye but not the other. Danny DeVito directed a horror film starring William Fichtner and the late Lance Reddick entitled Saint Sebastian. Completed in 2012, it's never been released and is currently DeVito's last feature film directing credit. Indonesia tried to leave the UN in 1965 due to Malaysia joining the Security Council and tried to form their own rival organization. They fully rejoined the UN in 1966. The Lisbon Maru was a Japanese cargo liner sunk on the 1st of October in 1942 while carrying over 1,800 British POWs. The hatches were ordered battened down by the captain to prevent escape. Local Chinese fishermen came to the rescue and saved 384 men. Storing your headphones with a few silica gel packets in the case can actually stop moisture from slowly breaking down the ear cups and adds years to their life. Silica pulls humidity out of the air so sweat and dampness don't stay trapped inside your pads. Bill Bigart was the only photojournalist that was killed during 9/11. He took his last photo seconds before the North Tower collapsed, burying him and his cameras with preserved film in the rubble. Actor Tim Curry based his accent for Frank N. Furter on Queen Elizabeth II. In a 1962 operation known as Starfish Prime, the United States detonated a nuclear bomb at high altitude, approximately 900 miles south of Hawaii. The electromagnetic pulse from the detonation caused a bright aura to appear in the atmosphere over a large area of the Pacific Ocean. In the 18th century, the medical consensus for scurvy was that it was caused by faulty digestion, not anything dealing with citrus nor vitamins. Doctors recommended fizzy drinks as a treatment, including a sulfuric acid mixture at one point. In 1881, an Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle was erected in New York City Central Park. Beneath it lies a time capsule holding the 1870 US Census, a Bible, Webster's Dictionary, Shakespeare's complete works, a guide to Egypt, and the Declaration of Independence. Point Roberts, Washington, United States is a peniclave, an enclave for practical purposes since it's only accessible on land via Canada. An accent called diaeresis is sometimes used in English. It looks like two dots over a letter and is written in alternative spellings of certain words, such as N-A-I-V-E instead of N-A-I-V-E without the two dots. In latter seasons of the 1987 animated TV show Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo's nunchucks were replaced with a grappling hook called the turtle line due to censorship in Europe. Several European countries had banned nunchucks due to violence, including people armed with the weapon. The Canadian provinces of Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador have unresolved border disputes over 180,000 square kilometers. The dispute originated prior to Newfoundland and Labrador joining Canada in 1949 and continues to resurface periodically. There's a deep-sea worm called Swimma bombaviridis, or green bomber worm, that escapes predators by throwing glowing bombs. The first internet router was called IMP-1 and it was the size of a phone booth. The American flag sometimes appears backwards, such as on the starboard side of spacecraft, because the US flag code requires it to appear as if moving forward. Poodles can be bred for hunting and working. In June of 1982, Roberto Calvi, nicknamed God's Banker, was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London. Although he had over 14,000 in cash and bricks found in his pockets, his death was deemed self-inflicted. The strangeness of his passing started multiple financial scandals. Greg Lake of ELP wrote Lucky Man when he was just 12 years old. There was a successful petition to get an Australian prisoner released after his 100th birthday, only for him to say, "Don't be silly, I live here," and refuse to leave. The West Virginia Mine Wars was the largest armed insurrection in US history outside of the Civil War, organized by laborers against their employers. Abraham Lincoln became the first historical figure to appear on a US coin when pennies were redesigned in 1909 in honor of the former president's would-be 100th birthday. The US national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, uses the melody of a British drinking song, the Anacreon in Heaven. It was written by John Stafford Smith in the 1770s for London's Anacreontic Society, a gentleman's club dedicated to wit, harmony, and the god of wine. An advertising agency faked a movement to support book burning in order to create animosity against them, and so subsequently saved a local public library that was facing closure due to budget cuts. People rallied against the book burners and voted to save the library. Canada officially switched to metric on April 1st, 1975, with some citizens thinking it was an April Fool's joke and others protesting it. The Canadian Metric Commission was officially abolished in 1985, with most Canadians now using a mix of imperial and metric measurements in daily life. The Simpsons creators shelved an Itchy and Scratchy spin-off because it made test audiences physically ill. The defunding of an $11 billion superconducting super collider caused huge growth in the field of quantitative finance, as the theoretical physics job market collapsed overnight and PhD graduates had to find jobs at finance companies. In 2018, Country Time Lemonade announced an initiative called Legal Aid, which offered to cover fines of up to $300 for children in the US who had been penalized for operating lemonade stands without a permit in 2017 and 2018. Armand Hammer didn't create an Arm & Hammer baking soda. The brand existed 31 years before he was born, though he later bought stock in the company because people kept asking him about the connection. Angus Barbieri, who fasted for 382 days in order to lose weight, ate nothing, had only 0-calorie drinks, vitamins, and electrolytes, and yeast. He successfully lost hundreds of pounds and returned to normal life. Richard Nixon is the only US president to be born on the West Coast and in any mainland state west of Texas. The first ever nuclear meltdown happened in June of 1948 at reactor A1 at the Mayak complex in Siberia. It would melt down again in July of 1948 and March of 1949, the latter accident killing at least 173 people. But that's it. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, leave a like, and of course subscribe because you won't want to miss the next video. Thanks for watching.